Hi, it's Michael Bociurkiw here in front of my kind of makeshift newsroom in Istanbul. And having just arrived in Turkey, you can still smell the jet fumes from the aircraft of the various NATO leaders leaving, especially that of Mr. Trump, who, for some still unexplained reason, left in the old Air Force One instead of the new one gifted to him by the Qataris. Speculation there in the New York Times and elsewhere is that as the war in Iran escalated, and we here were very much in the region, Iran missiles did head towards Turkey at least twice in the earlier phase of the war, that the new one wasn't properly equipped security-wise, especially with things to prevent missiles and other bad stuff from approaching that aircraft. Pretty extraordinary. Mr. Trump tried to push it off as some logistical thing. We wanted to show the new airplane to American troops in the UK. Doesn't stand up to a lot of the analysts. The other thing I'm kind of picking up in my nostrils is Meloni of Italy, where I've just returned from, and the rubber on her feet, if we can put it that way, burning from the humiliation of Mr. Trump. I watched her on TV today in Italy, and she was not happy, but she was very serious, very firm, because she knew she had to explain to the Italian public, who are growing, I would say, increasingly skeptical of her, that no, I have not been humiliated by Trump, that I'm standing up for Italy's interests, I always will, that I had him figured out from the beginning pretty much, and this is part of the strategy. We'll see how that holds up as time goes on, but looking at the Italian press today, it looks like she's being given a bit of a hard time. This was a NATO summit. Now they're happening every year under the new Secretary General and after his predecessor, and analysts saying it was boring, it was a waste of time, and in fact not much came out of it, to be honest. Pledges, words, but I'm always saying, and I can't say it enough, that time is not on their side. Time is not on the side of Western democracies, because the war is moving quickly. Russia is pounding Ukrainian cities. Odessa was hit. Kiev continues to be hit. And there are two front lines. One is the actual front line with Russia, but the other one is the one spreading across Ukraine. And I know I keep on repeating it, but there's this demographic issue as well. And also the reconstruction issue as well. That as these strikes happen, people will leave. We've seen it in Odessa. I've seen it with my own eyes. And also the destruction is getting very, very bad. Finally, I have to comment on Turkey, the host of this summit. It seems to be really the only winner from what happened here, getting the okay for F-35 jets, getting kicked out of the club, as it wanted to, of countries that are sanctioned by the U.S. around Russia, North Korea, opening the way for it to receive F-35 jets. And Turkey was put into that club because it purchased Russian S-400 air defense systems a few years ago. And Trump and Erdogan, buddy like never before. Finally, I am still of the opinion that if anyone's going to play a mediating role to settle the war between Russia and Ukraine, it's still probably Mr. Erdogan. We saw the bonhomie between him and Trump in this summit. He has Putin on speed dial, he has Zelensky on speed dial. He's probably the one to play a mediating role between Russia and Ukraine, if anybody. I know there are criticisms of him, especially for his somewhat authoritarian views, but I think that this is the man of the moment, especially given Turkey's deep stakes in Black Sea security. It's a many eyeballs on the screens behind me, but on two screens especially. Those are the ones playing the France versus Morocco game, almost 1 hour 0-0. And it reminds me of the World Cup in South Africa, where there were a lot of low-scoring games, and it doesn't really make for that interesting matches if you watch 0-0 for an hour plus. So what happens at the end is what happened in a few games already, where they kick on kind of penalty time or overtime rather. So, but a lot of interest as the time kicks down. One more thing, speaking of World Cup, Mr. Infantino is very well known by now as the head of FIFA, as someone who really butters up Mr. Trump. And I've seen on social media that he's been compared to, guess who? Anybody? Yes, the head of NATO. And Mark Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And in terms of buttering up Mr. Trump, sitting there while Mr. Trump criticizes NATO members, and he smiles and says nothing, and he was called onto the carpet, rightfully so, by a Danish journalist, and I'll play the clip if I have time, but yeah.
Rasmus Vaneborg from the Danish news agency.
Yes, hi.
Danish news agency Ritzau. Mark, you sit next to Donald Trump in moments where he talks about conquering Greenland, talks about lashing out at allies like Spain, starting trade wars, things that it doesn't seem like the old Mark Rutte would approve of. Does this have any effect on your self-respect when you sit next to him like that and say nothing?
You know, what I always do is acknowledge when praise is due, and I think we should praise Donald Trump for the fact that NATO is so much stronger. Of course, it has to do with the Russian threat, it has to do with the war in Ukraine, but it very much also has to do with President Trump delivering now what since Eisenhower the United States tried to achieve, equalizing spending between the US and Europe. And it makes Europe stronger. It makes Europe more relevant for the United States as a partner. So that is the transformative character of this summit, of what happened in The Hague, the implementation since The Hague, this summit as a point in time where we take stock, and I think that is extremely important. And when it comes to Greenland, I already explained, we had a meeting in Davos, and I said, I agree with you when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China, gaining access to the High North, but let's do this together. We have NATO for this, let's work together on this. This is exactly what we are doing.
Okay, we have very...
Who would have thought that the head of Mr. Infantino, the head of FIFA, would be compared to Mark Rutte, the head of NATO? That's it from me here in Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you for your support of War Briefing. And by all means, if you haven't already, please take out a paid subscription. If you have, please try and encourage others to do so, because it does help this reporting and commentary mission.